Well, hello. Welcome once again to the Creative Writing Live podcast. I'm Paul Zeidman. I'm quite excited to be talking to my guest today. Now, just a little bit of setup. I met him, I don't know how many years ago, but this is when they had this thing here in San Francisco called the Alternative Press Expo, which was for, I guess, alternative and independent web comic artists and artists of all kinds. And he had a booth there, and I was familiar with him because of his then web comic called Fried Chicken and Sushi. We will get into that in just a minute. But we've reconnected somewhat recently on social media, so I'm thrilled to have on today. Welcome to the Creative Writing Life podcast, Khalid Birdsong.
Hello, thank you. Thanks for having me, Paul.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. So, as Khalid, he's listened to a couple of the shows or watched a couple of the shows. He's probably familiar. We start things off talking about things we may have read or watched lately. Did we like them? Did we hate them? Were we indifferent to them? I'll go first to give Khalid a little time to gather his thoughts. So, the two things I've watched that come to mind immediately is that. I went to a screening of the Mel Brooks classic Blazing Saddles, which is a great movie, and I think some of the audience might have been a little bit uncomfortable with some of the jokes, but it's understandable. We're not definitely not going to get into that here, but it was still fun to go. And over the weekend, the local independent cinema showed the 1980 classic Flash Gordon with Sam J. Jones. Boy, did that not really hold up.
Oh,
It was because I had seen like the old serials with the Buster Crab from the 30s, and they were really trying to go for that kind of vibe, but trying to put like a Star Wars spin on it, and so the special effects were just you know 295 type, and some of the acting was okay. I mean, Timothy Dalton as Prince Baron, he was good. Brian Blessed, you can't go wrong with him. I had also didn't realize that they don't know who the actor is, but Sam Jones as Flash, and apparently his entire dialogue was dubbed by somebody else. So-
what?
yeah, I didn't know that either. But if you watch it, you can kind of tell it doesn't sound like him, and some of the writing is just atrocious. But that's neither here nor there. Khalid, how about you?
Let's see. I don't watch a lot of shows, but when I do, it's because someone's recommended it over and over and over. So I did watch both seasons of The Bear, about the chef and everything like that. And I was nervous and afraid to watch it because I've worked in kitchens before,
Hmm.
not only as a cook, but like as a server and an expo line, putting stuff on there, and that was a lot of what I did in college in the summers. So I know the pressure and all the craziness that goes on in the kitchen. So I was like, I can't handle it. But after enough people were recommending it, I just put the time in, and I loved it. I loved it, and it was something I could handle. And one thing that surprised me about it, because I thought, oh, it's just about working in a crazy kitchen, but I love the fact that it was about doing something that you really care about and that you must do. And as an artist, a writer, and teacher, that's what it's all about. And I did not expect that to be. And so I really felt like, oh, they're honoring professions that a lot of people just put down. Oh, you're working at a restaurant or a kitchen or whatever. But the people in the show, they really cared about it. And it was crazy, but they couldn't not do it. So that was a surprise. And then I just saw Furiosa.
Oh, okay.
Mad Max Saga, I guess it's called, and I liked the previous one 6 or 7 years ago, and so it was great. The action was insane, and I left the theater exhausted because there was so much going on, but it was good. I think it linked the two movies together well, and it was just unlike anything that you see. I mean, it's just so weird, but the world building was awesome because you
Mm.
all the little decisions that they made, you really felt like this could be a reality that we don't want, this post-apocalyptic world, but it felt like this is real, and so I was kind of taking notes in my head as I watched that. So
Is
yeah, and
that
then
is that something that you highly recommend? I mean, I saw Fury Road. I think saw Fury Road in the theaters. Is Furiosa also something you say, okay, you have to see this on the big screen?
yeah, I mean, I would recommend that, but of course, at this point, it's been out for a little while. I was
Mm.
just late because I've been so busy, and then no one else was in the theater at this point. It's been out, but I needed to see it in the theater because yes, the special effects and just wraps you around itself. So it was really great. So I suggest that, but hey, everybody has a great setup now, usually at home for their streaming. So however you're going to see it, just buckle your seatbelt. I thought it was pretty awesome.
Okay, that's fantastic. All right, Khalid. So let's talk a little bit about you. So tell us a little bit about how you got started. Now you're a cartoonist and you're a writer and you're an art teacher. But let's start with Khalid, the early years. So were you like the kind of kid like just doodling all the time in your notebook at school and like the teacher saying, "Stop, put that away, focus on the real stuff."
Yes, that's what it was actually. Like even when I started drawing when I was 3, and
Wow.
even though it was simple drawings, like I was never just drawing static. And this is
Hmm.
what my parents always tell me. They were like, "Oh yeah, you would draw," and then I would hum and make music, and then I'd speak like the characters. And we're gonna go here, and we're doing this, and I would bring it to life. And it used to be that I would draw in books at home. It doesn't matter what it is. I would find books and just draw within them. And my mother, who was also a teacher, she saw that and she was like, "Okay, you can't draw in the books," but then she would grab reams of photocopy paper and printer paper, and she'd just bring them home, like, "You draw on these." And so then she gave those to me. I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And so then I started drawing, and then there were always stories that happened. And so maybe that's the difference between me and someone who's maybe an illustrator or something like that. There was a sequence of events and stories that would happen, and so then those became comics
Hmm.
with characters going through all kinds of different adventures. And then I would actually um, photocopy them. I would photocopy them, staple them, and sell them to my friends for like a quarter when I was
Hmm.
like second grade or so. And so I've just kept doing that since. Like I haven't stopped. Some people stop making comics and doing that sort of thing in middle school or after, but I just kept it going and kept making new characters. At school, everyone knew, oh, he's got this series going, and it would invigorate and excite me, the fact that people are waiting for the next issue of whatever I would do. And so that's what I haven't stopped. And so I'm just a grown up doing the same thing I did as a kid.
Oh, that is fantastic. You can't go wrong with that. So, for the people who are listening, I will describe behind Khalid on his wall. He's got several framed comic strips. So now, as a young burgeoning cartoonist, did you have like favorites or influences for your art? But also, this is a question I have to ask anyone who's involved with cartooning. Were you really into comic books? And if you still are, and like maybe some favorites and influences from those. But you can
Yeah.
start with the comic strips first if you want.
Okay, yeah, that's a big one. So I think that for me, first it was animation,
Okay.
watching animated movies and shows. And so that was kind of what it is, and it still is. It's more like I learned from watching things move and then figuring out how to put them on paper visually and use camera angles and all of that. But then it became comic strips like in the newspaper and all of that. Of course, I loved Garfield. I went through the Garfield, reading every Garfield type comic, and you can tell because a lot of my characters have large eyes, like Jim Davis does. But a lot of that it was comic strips, reading comic strip collections. Then I got into Archie for a time in middle school, and so I kept growing into comics. And then in middle school, I also read European comics like Asterix and Obelix, and
Okay.
so it was different adventures. I really was called more to regular people getting in adventures and doing amazing, fantastic things. Really, Japanese comics and manga wasn't really, I'm a kid of the 80s, so not a lot of that at the time, but I got whatever I could get my hands on. And then when I would make comics, it was maybe it's based on a movie, like I did one based off of Teen Wolf or something, and I would just change it, change the characters and all of that. Or I would just come up with adventures of my own, but not so much superheroes.
Hmm.
Then in, let's see, high school, I started getting more into actual like floppy monthly comics. And I remember before that, it was eighth grade. My dad bought me a few Superman comics, and I was blown away because I was, studying how to draw and how to draw people and
Hmm.
anatomy and all those and scenes and all that sort of thing. And then I finally got a hold of real comics, and I'll never forget because it was Superman in space. Like Superman had to flee Earth or something. It was the craziest concept, but I'll never forget getting those comics and looking through and seeing what you can do with the medium. Like, wow, you can really look at all these different. It's a close up. There's far away. There's this, and I was so accustomed to comic strips and yeah, European comics did amazing things too, but it was different. And so then I started getting into superheroes and comics and reading those, and of course loving Batman and X-Men and Wolverine, that sort of thing. And so through high school and college, I read a lot more American superhero comics and wanted to kind of do something that blends that all together.
Now, did reading, especially, I guess, like the superhero comics, because the writing in those is always so, imaginative, and there's always something new going on, and sometimes, they'll bring back a classic bad guy type of thing. But did the writing of the comics, did that have an influence of the writing that you were doing for your material?
I think it did. I think it did. Just that whole, I noticed that I liked a single hero. I like that. I mean, I enjoy X-Men as a group, but I like
Okay,
the whole, okay, there's one person that needs to defeat the bad guy or needs to get through something. And also, I kind of, even though I loved comics, American comics, I also felt that they were a little bit silly and cheesy. And so I
sure.
felt like or campy, especially the way it used to be. It's less of that now,
Hmm.
but I thought it was funny. So then when I would make my own comics, I would intentionally write them in a campy way and not take them too seriously, is my point. It's like I just want people to have fun. I want them to read it and escape a little bit. And even if it's far fetched or the dialogue is a little bit silly or, overblown, then that's okay because that's what comics are. They're for fun. And yes, you had serious comics too, like Mouse and these other really, important works. But for me, it felt like comics, that was the fun place to just play.
Well, okay. So on that note, so you said you also were reading a lot of European comics, which are much more adult in, I guess, in the way they approach subjects and also in their presentation. That was that also an influence? I mean, because you have the silliness, so to speak, of the American comics. So do you kind of go for the, sophistication of the European influence?
Yeah, I think it's also just another mix because I think about the first kind of independent comic that I produced, Aura, and it was more of a fantasy comic. But that was after I also read ElfQuest, which was another huge influence on me. But I
Sure.
really enjoyed that mix of it's a bit cartoony, but it's serious subject matter. There's action. It's also, that this is a comic and they're not trying to make it real. So it could, because there's fantasy there. And so I think, especially after college, I started finding that that's where I like to live with the work that I do. Like it can feel a bit real, but it needs to not, it can be a little serious, heavy, but also it
Hmm.
needs to be a bit lighthearted. And so I started to try to combine that together from all of those influences.
Okay. So as I mentioned at the top of the show, that the reason discovered you for me was that you had this web comic called Fried Chicken and Sushi, and now is that totally autobiographical? And I guess I'm going to let you do the setup because you couldn't do the explanation much better than I could.
Well, so fried chicken and sushi, it started in my head when I lived in Japan for 2 years. I was an assistant English teacher in junior high school outside of Osaka, Japan, and I loved the experience. It was hard and wonderful and crazy. And I kept telling myself that when I get back to America, I've got to do something with this. I've got to make some kind of comic book. I originally thought it's going to be a comic book, and I was going to do that. And then when I came back to America, I started planning it and thinking, okay, I'm going to make this into, some kind of action adventure. And I was going to call it the Black Samurai, where there's like there's a black man who's working in Japan, and there's this Japanese raccoon, Tanuki, that appears and sends him back to ancient Japan, and he's suddenly a samurai and he's got to battle monsters. And that will be the pull-up. It's like he's in the middle of teaching and he disappears. And he's got, so I came up with this idea of, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And it mixes everything I love together. And then I entered a competition, the comic book challenge, kind of like the American Idol of comics. And I became a finalist in that. And I had to present it to a panel of judges and all this. So I felt like, and then just making it there helped me understand. I didn't win the competition, but it helped me understand that, maybe I have something here with this idea that I should continue on and not just give up just because I didn't win this competition. And then I looked around at that time period. What was that, 2008 or so, 2009? Web comics were becoming a big thing, especially humorous webcomics, where
Hmm.
they're taking something that's like a comic strip and putting it online and then posting regularly. And I said, well, maybe I could make this not a long form comic, but make it into a comic strip. I liked drawing comic strips a little when I was younger, but I'm not a humor writer. But yeah, I started looking into, okay, how do you write humor? And so I looked up a lot of books and I said, oh, there are books on writing humor, and there's a method to this, and there are techniques and ways that you can figure this out. And so I read a lot of books and books by Scott Dickers, who does a lot of how to write funny books, and so I started learning that, oh, okay, I can figure out how to do this, and I'm going to make it a comic strip so that hopefully it can get attention online. And at the time, my daughter was born, and I wanted to do this. And I said, well, there's no way I can do every single day.
Mm.
So why don't I just post as much as I can on a regular basis? And so I said, I'm going to make this about loosely based on me living in Japan and that kind of view that you probably don't ever hear about, a black man in Japan. And my story in a small kind of town, but I'll post these strips Monday and Wednesday, I think it was, or it was Tuesday, Thursday, but it was twice a week. It was twice a week, and I said, I'm going to see if I can just do this every week and not stop like an actual cartoonist. And I mainly did them in black and white. And then once a month or so, I would do it in color because it just took a lot of time. And then that was something that I could do just for myself, as a new parent and trying to figure that out and working full time and teaching. And so that's where it started. And then it grew. It started to grow. And that was just on my website. I mean, this was before sharing it on social media and all that sort of
Mm.
thing. It was just on a website where people looked, they were looking for stuff, they were looking for things. And so up till now, fried chicken and sushi is the most popular thing that I've done. But yeah, I did it for 4 years, and I'm proud to say I never missed an update. It was 4 years consistently, and then after that, I put together two books of my own, book collections of all of the strips. Living in Japan ain't easy, and living in Japan ain't still ain't easy. And so it was fun, and I got some good feedback from that. But from there, I learned that, hey, I can do something on a regular basis like this without stopping. Before I would make comics and make graphic novels and work on them, but every single week I had a deadline and I had to hit that deadline. And it didn't matter what was going on in my life, how sick I might have been, or if I'm traveling, I'd have to, do a few before so that I can cover what I missed. So I really learned how to post on a regular basis, and I think that's benefited me since.
That is fantastic. So let's go back to like how you were putting the strips together. That you said you had to research how to write funny. So I mean, did you like were the first batch like were they like kind of like a joke a day type of thing? Because I also noticed that over the course of time that you started doing like these longer, not chapter stories, but like here's a story, but it's going to take me 9 to 10 strips, or it's going to take several weeks to tell. Now, when you plot out the strip, do you have an idea? Okay, here's what it's going to be. Here's the punchline, and you just kind of have to put it together. And for the longer ones, do you say, okay, here's how it starts, and I know how it ends. I'm just going to work my way through it. Like, okay, this is going to be 10 strips, or it's going to be I'm just going to start and then see where it goes.
So, at first I did think about, okay, this is going to be a strip where I have to make it funny. So I just have to make each one funny. But as I went through, I started realizing, you know what? There was so much more about living in Japan than just, oh, Japan is this different country and things are so different and so funny and so weird. And I didn't want it to be that. I didn't want it to be where every strip was just about, look at this. This is funny too. And look at this strange thing. I said, well, I think I need to approach this as a writer. Like, what do people care about? They care about story and they care about characters. So yes, I'll make sure that there's some jokes there, but I really wanted to make sure some kind of story was unfolding.
Mm.
And so that was the thing of it, where I very early on realized that, okay, I've got Carl, who's the main character, and then I've got Jay, his best friend, who didn't get a chance to get on the teaching program and move to Japan. And then it became this thing of, okay, what is Carl going to do? Is he going to date? Is he going to, what's going to happen with him? And then Jay, what's happening with him in America? Will he ever get to Japan? And then I felt like if I did that, the readers would come back. You know what I mean? I had to think about it in a way of, okay, what are things that people, why are they even coming? Are they coming just for the jokes? I'm not that funny. So I need to have something that pulls them in. And I feel like that as I went along, most of the time I would have, maybe about four comic strips planned out in my head and sketched before I did them. I read that, um, one of my favorite comics, Calvin and Hobbes, they were plotted at maybe 2 weeks. The story would be about 2 weeks long. And then, it was found that, well, people, they kind of lose interest after about 2 weeks. So you don't want stories that just go on and on and on. So I knew that, okay, I could probably get a few comics with this ongoing story or pull away for a bit and come back to something, but I shouldn't just stay on one story for a long time. So just from researching and reading and trying, I learned. And then after about the first year of doing fried chicken and sushi, I actually got into a groove, and I feel like I found my voice. I understood the kind of humor that I was going to use, and and it's great. In fact, I haven't even felt that since then exactly. Like it was really a great feeling of like, I know what this comic strip is. I know how it's supposed to feel and how it's supposed to sound. And I just need to keep making it. And after that, it really started to grow. But trying a few things at first and then kind of realizing I needed more story and characters really, I think, helped to bring it out.
Did you ever find that you'd be working on something and you'd finish it and you'd be just about to post it and you think, yeah, I'm not sure if this works. Or did you ever were there many times of having just totally start over? Like, oh yeah, this is, you'd finish and be like, oh, what was I thinking? And just, junk it and start again.
Okay, so number one, yes, the first part of your, yes, of course, definitely thinking that, oh, this is just awful. It's not going to work. But what's great is with having a deadline, and people waiting, they're waiting for the next thing. You have to have something out. You just have to put it out. And so that was the thing that was freeing about it, where it's just, and a lot of times those ones that I thought were horrible were the ones everyone loved. And I was like, why did that work? Why did they like that one? So you just don't know. So it gave me a chance to experiment and try new things and just trust myself. And even if I didn't trust myself, I got to put it out. I only had but so much time in a day to draw. I really didn't have time to restart a story or redraw a whole lot of
Mm.
panels or anything. It was really like I had to put it out there and go, and then see how it works. And then if it doesn't work out so great, you can learn, and that's what's nice about working online. You learn a lot quicker what's working and what's not. I think that that's great when you put stuff out, and then if it resonates, you're like, oh, do more of that. And if it doesn't, you can be like, well, I can switch this or change this or get rid of this. It's much easier than just guessing on my
Mm.
own by myself. And I hope this works. And I'm just going to do all of this 200-page graphic novel and put it out there and hope for the best. No, it was nice to be able to kind of have readers comment and get an idea, see how many views I received for certain things. It really helped me to figure out what works, but helped me know that you just got to put stuff out there.
Did you ever have a time like you would put something out that, this is pretty good, it's not the absolute best, but hey, I think this is funny, and all of a sudden it just blows up and like you get all these responses like, oh my God, funniest thing, my friend who also spent time in Japan, they can totally relate to that.
That happened a lot. Yeah, that happened a lot. And it felt great that, okay, something really hit and people were waiting for someone to say it or mention it. I would say, though, that sometimes, I would talk about things that were, I don't have to say racist, but, sometimes you're not treated equally, and especially in Japan. And so I would get nervous about posting those because so many people have such a positive view of Japan, as they should, amazing country, but there are things that are difficult about it too, and it's not perfect. It's a country. It's like every place has its positives and negatives, and so I would really get nervous about saying negative things or airing my frustrations to the comics. But a lot of times that's what people want to hear, and now we're so used to it with YouTube and everything else, just with people being authentic, right, and saying all the good and the bad. But I think back then I was still nervous about it. I don't know if I can really share the real stuff. But the more I did, the more people loved it because they trusted me. They knew that, oh, well, he's not going to hide. He's not going to not talk about how it really is. And so I feel like that's kind of the advantage of even cartooning because you're kind of making fun of it so people can laugh. But you can really talk about some difficult truths.
Were there ever any topics or I guess subjects that you wanted to address in the strip, but then just weren't able to, or you just kind of like, oh, I'm gonna hold off on that one for now.
Well, I mean, in general, I did look at it as an all ages comic strip. I wanted to say that if, I mean, it's not going to be in the newspapers, but if it could be, I would like for it to be. So I
Hmm.
didn't want to curse, and sometimes I would do the cartoon cursing with the characters and
Sure.
ampersands and this and all that sort of thing. So I would do that for a curse word. I didn't want to really talk about sex acts as much or something like it was really supposed to be something that a kid could read. And I'm sure there are people that wanted me to talk about certain things going on as a foreigner in Japan, especially with dating. But I just stayed away from it because I felt like, I want to have this to be something my child could read when she's young and all of that. And of course, I'm a teacher, so I want my students to be able to read what I'm working on as well. So, I had to be careful with that. And I think that was good. I think it's going to last a lot longer because of that.
Okay, so that brings up a great point. So you brought fried chicken and sushi to a close, but then it seemed like to me, the reader, soon after that you relaunched it, but as Lil Fried Chicken and Sushi. So you just de-aged all the characters. So you made everybody was like what, like 10, 12 years old, and then Carl and his sister. Then now their parents are in the picture. And so was that part of the I just want to make this a little more family friendly, or it's more an all ages kind of strip?
Couple of things on that. So, first, I really wanted Fried Chicken and Sushi to be published online through Go Comics. And I had learned through other cartoonists that, well, Go Comics, even though it's Andrews McMeel, like they're a syndicate that syndicates comic strips in the newspaper, but they also have this online area where you can read comics online. And then you can also have your work up there with famous, comics like Peanuts and Calvin and Hobbes and all of that. And so I said, oh, that, and they also pay you a little bit. So I was like, oh, really? Okay. So I submitted online fried chicken and sushi. I don't know how many strips I did, but I submitted strips to them. And then I also said, well, because I tried out the little fried chicken and sushi just for fun in the main fried chicken and sushi comics. So I was like, let me just put in these few strips that I did where the characters are kids, just in case. And, I submitted and then waited, I don't know, a month or something like that. And I heard back from the editor, and she was like, well, you've been doing this for 4 years straight, so it shows that you're committed and you're a cartoonist and all that. Fried chicken and sushi is a bit all over the place, and we're not sure if we can do it. But the one with the kids, that's interesting. Maybe we can talk about that. So that's where it went. And so I decided at first, okay, I'm going to do both. I'm going to do little fried chicken and sushi, but I'm also going to keep regular fried chicken and sushi for all the people that
The
have
long-term fans.
long-term fans and keep that going. The only problem is that I wasn't living in Japan anymore. I was back in America, and I didn't, like I would still, my wife is Japanese, so we go back to Japan in the summers. So that's when I would write, notes and things that I've been through to add to the comics. But still, it just didn't feel as authentic it felt like I was really just creating stories where I knew that if
Mm.
I still lived in Japan, boy, it would probably be amazing because every day I've got something that I could use for comics, but it just felt wrong. And so I felt like I was trying hard, where I didn't feel that way before. I felt like it was effortless before. And now it's kind of like, well, I don't know. So I decided to end original fried chicken and sushi. And then I decided I'm going to keep going with little fried chicken and sushi. So then it can then kind of morph into a family comic strip more than just dating and being single in Japan and all of that. It's more of a family comic that does really well in comic strip format. And so even though I did that, I don't know. I feel like it was kind of the biggest mistake that I made. And so that's a regret. But it was hard. I could not do two strips with my schedule and life and all of that.
Sure, sure.
But I think I was hoping for a little bit more from Go Comics, and I still got new readers and everything, people that liked comics and comic strips and all of that. But it didn't go where I hope now. Hindsight is always 2020, I know, but still, just this idea of I think that the fans of the original fried chicken and sushi, I think I could have turned that more into a business where I could have had more products and figured out something. Maybe I could have switched it and said, okay, well now Carl moves with his girlfriend Mai to America and they get married and it could have become something else. I could have made it work, but I just was excited about being on Go Comics and wanting to try something new, and I just couldn't do them all together. So yeah, so that's kind of how it came about. But I enjoyed Little Fried Chicken and Sushi. It was a lot of fun and a pretty good experience. But yeah, I still feel bad for stopping the original.
Mm. So I do have to ask, since Little Fried Chicken and Sushi was really kind of like, the preteen slash tween set, that was the character, the primary characters, and you have a daughter. So was she like a big input? You'd kind of like go to her and say, does this seem like something that somebody that age would say? Like, was she a creative advisor?
She really wasn't an advisor, interesting enough, but she did like reading it, and sometimes she would give me suggestions of things that I could do. What was fun about Little Fried Chicken and Sushi is that the Tanuki raccoon character, in the original, he was just kind of a figment of my imagination, and because I was alone and isolated, and so the statue was coming to life. But in the actual Little Fried Chicken and Sushi, he could be a real character that interacts with the family. He's got actual magic, so he can make crazy things happen, and anything is possible, which was another thing I thought was fun about it. So my daughter would give me ideas sometimes. Well, why hasn't he tried this yet, or why not do that, or something like that. So it wasn't that she had to read each one and edit and say, oh, a kid would never say that. But it was more, and I heard a lot of kids all the time. I mean, just being a teacher, a lot of times I would hear something in the classroom and be like, oh gosh, I got to use that. But yeah, but she loved it. She loved being involved with it, and I even did a few strips where she's in there. And so it was fun to be able to kind of have her grow up with the comic, and she reread a lot of the strips over and over again, and so she's one of my biggest fans. And so, really, just having fried chicken and sushi in general is just a great record of, I guess, our family history in some ways. Like, no matter if it never goes down in history, at least for our family, if you're wondering how, if she's ever wondering how her parents kind of got together and what happened and what it's like to merge two families and two countries together, there's this, funny cartoon collection of all of that. And so that's something I didn't expect, to really feel like, oh yeah, I have something to give to my daughter and to my family now. So that's been kind of a nice surprise.
Oh, that's great. That is just really nice to hear. So, okay, so you returned to America. One of your current jobs is that you're also an art teacher. So I have to ask, since you are our cartoonist as well, how much of an influence does that have on your teaching? Like, do you ever like you use your drawing to get the point across of what you're trying to teach in class?
Oh, all the time. Yeah. I mean, I love to draw on the board, on the whiteboard, and we practice together. And so, yeah, showing them step by step, that's a big part of what I do for teaching and teaching art. But yeah, I try to pull in some cartooning in there too. And so we'll have some comic making units and things like that. But yes, I think that the students really connect when they know that, oh, he can draw and he can show me how to do it. And, I did kind of get a degree in graphic design and studied fine art. And so a lot of these techniques from the painting, drawing, clay, I've learned before. So I'm pulling from my education, but I'm a strong believer in just kind of showing them step by step what to do. And so it's fun. And I also feel like it is a creative job because I
Mhm.
every day get to go in and figure out how to make this fun. I'm working with and seeing what they create and helping them to make it even more fun and creative. So I think it's a pretty good mix, and the schedule works pretty well for cartooning. And even having the summer off, I can do more drawing, writing, cartooning in the summers. So I really like the flow of the year.
Okay, that's really cool. So we talked earlier about how you kind of had to develop your writing skills in addition to your art skills when you were starting out. So is that also something? I mean, even though it's primarily art, when you were discussing, especially illustration or cartooning with your students, do you spend time talking about story? Like, okay, you can't just have brick falls on the character's head. You have to a little setup. Like setup punchline, even for like a two-panel strip about a joke.
For sure. So a lot of times when I'm doing with my students at school, but I'll also do cartooning workshops around the area at libraries and things like that. And when I do talk about sequential art, how it works, storytelling, and how that works. And the same kind of things apply to writing a story. You have to have some conflict. You have to have a character that wants something and to make it difficult for them to actually receive it. It shouldn't be easy. And you need to have characters that are different or have different, different needs and wants and all that sort of thing. So, and I tell students, yeah, it goes hand in hand. The drawing is great, but you've got to know how to write and commit to getting better at writing in order to do your cartoons, your comics, and all of that. And even if you are working with a writer, still you have to understand the story so that you know how to draw. Like, this is an important moment. What is important to see in here? Why is this important? These are things you should understand visually so that you can tell a good story. So yes, I'm always kind of teaching a combination of drawing and writing.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So like especially because I was thinking that like if you're working with a student and they want to tell a scary story, but they also have a very cartoony art style. I mean, do you try to get them to understand, okay, so if you're trying to tell a scary story, it'll be even scarier if you can make the image a little scarier or I mean, is that the sort of thing that you work on with your students?
Yes, it is, but a lot of it is intent. What are you
Mm,
trying to do with this story? And so, yeah, I guess if you're doing a scary story, are you doing this scary story for adults? Are you doing it for a kid? Are you doing who is this for? Because that will dictate the art style, whether it's cute or cartoony or more realistic. Are you going to show a lot of gore? Do you want to? Is it bloody? Is it more frightening and eerie? So you're not going to show a lot of it, but you're going to suggest. So that's what a lot of it is making choices. That's the thing, making choices. And I think most writers understand that. Like you have to choose, but you have to choose and commit to it. So you're not going to do anything unless you make a choice and move forward with it. So a lot of the students, a lot of times they're afraid, well, I don't know if that's good enough or that's right enough. And sometimes it comes down to just doing it more often. I think just like you have to write a lot, you have to draw a lot, you have to draw and make comics a lot to get the feeling of I'm doing it this way. I've chosen it to do this and this and this and this, but it's not quite working for me. Why? And then trying to figure that out. Well, if I change this or do that, or maybe it's a little too realistic and I change the style a little bit, when it starts working, you should feel it in yourself and you should be having a good time enjoying the process. And so that's a lot of what we're working on. And that can be hard because a lot of young people want you to tell them what to do,
mhm.
and you can tell them, but only up to a certain point, right? I mean, at some point you're just going to have to trust yourself and go for it on your own.
Oh, okay, so that brings up a great point. So what are the grades that you usually work with?
So for cartooning workshops, I mean, I like to work with, say, third through eighth grade, because that's the time when they're really into drawing comics and wanting to know how to grow and to do it. And as I mentioned before, a lot of times after eighth grade, they kind of fall off. And if you're really into it, sure. But I've taught all ages art, but all ages cartooning as well. And it's just too hard when they're in kindergarten and first grade.
Right.
It's hard to focus and all that sort of thing. And I've taught high school too, and it's great because that age they're very focused on what they like and they know what they want to do. And their, of course, art skills are a lot more developed, so they can do more. But I find the sweet spot is just like that elementary, middle school age works really well because they have a lot of excitement behind it, and it's kind of like magic to them. And learning
Hmm.
rules of telling stories is visually is exciting.
Is it I guess challenging for you like if you're like you have one class it's with third graders and then later in the day you have to deal with high school freshmen. So do you adjust how you're presenting it to the class like with the third graders it's a lot more explaining things and with the high schoolers it's kind of like okay you know what to do show me how you're going to do it.
Yep, yep, that's how it is. I mean, just in teaching in general, because even right now, as an art teacher, I'm teaching fifth through eighth grade, and it's very different teaching fifth graders
Hmm.
and eighth graders, as you can imagine. And it's just even how I explain it, how how much detail I get into it. Maybe with fifth graders, I show more of how to do it
Mm.
rather than talk about it more. And I give them more instruction and give them more ideas of what to do. Whereas eighth grade doesn't need as much of that and they don't want it. They're like, no, I get it. Let me just try to do it. And so that's the thing of just like adjustment. And that can make a teacher tired. That is part of what makes it exhausting. It's like getting in front of your class and kind of figuring out how to do it. Sometimes it doesn't work. And then you're like, okay, I have to do a little bit more of that. But I also find that exciting because if I've taught this over and over again, sure, I have the experience in this certain project and I know what to expect. But if it's something new that I'm presenting, yeah, there's a lot of learning that goes into how am I going to present this in a way that they're going to understand it, they're going to get excited about it, and they're actually going to walk away learning and then be able to create art on their own without my help. And so I think that's the part of just teaching in general that I think is really dynamic and interesting.
Very cool. Have you had any students, especially, I guess, former students who've come back, said, "Oh, hey, Mr. Birdsong, look, I created this comic on my own. I self-published it, or I started a web comic." I mean, that must just make you just swell with pride.
It is. It's great. It's great when I see it. I would say though, Paul, like I wish it happened more often.
Mm.
Like it's just I don't. I mean, students always come back and they say nice things about art and they really enjoy their time in art class, or they say really great things. Oh, I have never had an art teacher as great and fun as you, and these great things that puff up my ego and stuff. But a lot of them are not creating
Mm.
anymore, and that it's kind of sad. I mean, I've had I think one student that's gone on to that I know of that's really gone on to like work in animation, and we're still in contact with each other, and it's just so exciting to follow kind of his career and his growth and see how his work has grown. But I wish that was a lot more. I just wish we had more students like that. But either way, I think that if they felt like they had a positive experience learning art, I feel like that is really great. There are a lot of people that do not. They do
Mm.
not enjoy art, or they didn't even get art when they were a kid, but they didn't enjoy art, or it just wasn't fun, and so they have this negative view. And I'm convinced that we're going to need art, creativity, that kind of design thinking as we go forward in the world now. We've got to be able to think in that way. So I'm happy that at least they can look back and feel like, you know what, I am an artist. I've been an artist. I can do this. And so I'm hoping that I'm contributing to their life in some way creatively, in whatever they end up doing.
Oh, that is fantastic. So, let us start to wrap things up. So, what is the advice that you really give to young writers, and not just cartoonists, but writers, because it all is about creativity?
Right. I say draw a lot and write a lot. And that's not original advice, like everyone knows. But I also think that if you're reading a lot, I mean, you've got to do all of that. You've got to take it in and put it back out. You know what I mean? Like you've got to be able to, if you like all of that, read novels, read any kind of book you can get your hands on, but also write a lot and write the stories, draw the stories, and it takes time. It's a lot of work. It's a real commitment to do that. But that's really the secret is just being able to regularly, take in and put out. And so that's the thing that I think is hard for people because they want to look at me and say, well, you're just naturally amazing. And wow, I'm so jealous. I wish I could draw like you. And I always think, no, you don't. Because you don't want to get up at 4:30 in the morning like and draw and write before you go to your job all day and then take care of family after that. Like there's a lot of commitment that goes on daily to
Mhm.
do what I'm doing, and I love it. I have fun. It really helps me make sense of the world, and I get excited about it, and I love seeing growth and being able to tell stories and hopefully inspire people. But it's a daily thing you have to do,
Mhm.
um, and you have to keep doing, and then you have to kind of suck at it at first. You got to work through that and get better. And so I think that's the thing, having that confidence and that interest in it to just keep going is the hard part. But if you can do that, you'll grow and you'll get better. And hopefully, if you enjoy it, you'll just keep going.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that because it's what I tell new writers that, first of all, it's a marathon, not a sprint, and nothing's going to happen overnight. That when you're first starting out, you don't know what you don't know, so your writing is just going to be awful. And so you just have to embrace that and realize, okay, then you finish that first thing and you look back and say, okay, how can I make this better? And I'm sure it's the same thing with art that, nobody's going to draw like, for comic book fans, nobody starts out their first day of drawing like Alex Ross. And so, and so it's going to be, stick figures, and you just have to keep at it. And it's like it's exercise and muscle. You just have to keep working it. And the more you do it, the better you'll get.
I agree. Thank you. I mean, that's great advice. And then one thing I can say for cartooning in particular is that I find for the drawing and writing part, I think that if you can write really well, you'll get a lot further than someone that can draw really well because people they stick to you because of the writing. And so, yeah, people like art. I guess in superhero comics, maybe they'll just read something because it looks beautiful. But a lot of times, if the writing is just amazing, then people will stay. And then you've seen comic strips where they're not drawn well, but it's funny, it's
Mhm.
hilarious. But like it's more about the writing. And then even if it's a graphic novel and it's a long story with characters and all of that, if it's a good story, I'll keep reading it. And a lot of people will. They'll get into it and well, the art isn't great, but oh man, I can't put this down. So I feel like the writing is so important that I think people need to just make sure that they work hard on that part. And also, yes, the drawing, but writing is key.
Okay. Well, Khalid, this has been great conversation. Fantastic stuff. So I know that you mentioned your two fried chicken and sushi books. So I also know you have other books available for purchase. So what are those, and where can people find all of them?
Yeah, so the fried chicken and sushi books are on Amazon.com and also my graphic novel Tales of Trattoria Youngbloods. And that's a 200-page kind of vampire graphic novel about a girl that has to fight her way through vampire gangs with her dad's bat in one night. That's also for sale. And yeah, and the main thing that I'm doing right now is my Substack newsletter, Khalid Birdsong. I think that's Substack.net. I think that's what it is, but it's a new creative life, and it's basically comics. It's talking about creativity and how to kind of keep yourself going and all of that. But I'm loving working on that every week on Substack, and so yeah, that's kind of where you can find me. And if you want to read old online comics of fried chicken and sushi, you can go to friedchickenandsushi.com, and everything is there from what I'm working on now to all the archived comics. And also on gocomics.com, you can search up Little Fried Chicken and Sushi, and all of those strips are there. What's nice is I did it for 7 years, Little Fried Chicken and Sushi. When I stopped, though, they were great because they're like, you know what, we're just going to keep it running now. And so twice a week, they just kind of keep the comics running, and then when they finish, they just start over all over again. So it helps to bring in new readers and all of that. So it's just kind of I'm a part of Go Comics for life now, and so that's really exciting. That maybe it didn't become hugely successful that I in a way that I had hoped, but I have something there. I had experience. I had an editor that I could talk to every now and then to help me with writing and stories, and so I grew a lot from that. So yeah, those are the places you can find me online, and yeah, definitely leave comments everywhere if you like what you see.
Actually, I do have to ask just before we go that so once the cycle on Go Comics starts over, do you get people who contact you say, "Why did it end?"
Yes, yes, because there'll be something where it's like, oh, it ends and it starts, and like, well, oh, you started again. That's great. And they don't, and so I'll sometimes go into Go Comics and I'll comment at the bottom. I'll keep track and say, well, actually, it ended in this time, but they're just restarting it again, and I don't know if I'll do new ones anytime soon. And so
Mhm.
it is nice, actually, that there are people that care enough to comment and say, wow, we want to have more of this. But for now, yeah, I'm just kind of letting it be what it was, and it's nice that it can have a home.
I was wondering if people contact you say, "So how does that like how does Carl and May's story end?" If people like don't leave us hanging like that.
Right, I know, and so I love that. I mean, if that happens, great. That's what you want, right? You want people to
Mhm.
want more and everything. And I keep saying that one day I'll restart and do something and change it, but who knows? Who knows? But for now, I'm hoping that I'm getting those fans that just read through it all and they want more. And of course, if they, that's the little fried chicken and sushi. But if they want regular fried chicken, there's more for them to see in the books and on my website. So I'm hoping for new fans, but we'll see.
No, that's fantastic. And where can people also find you online, social media wise?
Let's see. So I'm Khalid or at Khalid Birdsong on just about all of them, on Twitter X, on Instagram. Um, those are mainly where I post. I haven't really spread out too much. I mean, I do have a Facebook, but I'm not very active on Facebook as much. And yeah, and Substack. Substack has notes that I like to be on, which is kind of like a Twitter, and so I'll post videos. I'm also on TikTok, and I'm not sure what that is. It's probably just Carly Birdsong again, but I also will record videos of myself drawing, kind of sped up videos,
Hmm.
drawing things. People can see that and see what I'm working on there. So yeah, if you have my name, you can probably find me on just about all of those major social media sites.
Yeah, I will attest to especially the Twitter and Instagram ones that I really enjoy that you just do like these. It's not experiments, but like like drawing exercises. Like, okay, I'm going to draw four angry faces, and here are four surprised faces, and they are sped up, and it's great to watch them come to life and just watch your pen in action. It's really entertaining.
Oh, thanks, thanks. And so I want to keep that going. And so some of it is inspiration, but it's also fun. And it's a daily practice, right? As we were talking about earlier, of just showing that, look, I'm doing this too. I'm getting down on in my sketchbook, trying to create and challenge myself, draw with a pen instead of a pencil first. And can I do this? I don't know. And you can watch. And I feel like that's also the future with AI and all of that. Like you got
Mm.
to record yourself. You got to prove that there's a human being making this. There's a human being behind this. And I feel like that's something that people will appreciate going forward uh, in our modern world.
Okay, well, Khalid Birdsong, thank you so much for being on the show today. This was like I said, it's a lot of fun and really informative, and I think really helpful and inspirational because we have a lot of writers out there who, people are like, oh, I'm a crappy drawer or I'm a crappy artist, but that they have to start somewhere. You'll start out crappy, but the more you do it, the better you'll get at it.
That's it. That's it. Sounds good. Well, thanks for having me, Paul. This was a
Uh,
lot of fun.
Okay, excellent. Like you said, he's Khalid Birdsong, and he is on the socials at Khalid Birdsong, as you said, just about everywhere. This has been the Creative Writing Life podcast. You can check out my screenwriting blog at Maximum Z at maximumz.blog. I'm on Twitter at Maximum_Z, and I'm on Instagram at Pez Screenwriting, PEZ Screenwriting. Like you said, he's Khalid. I'm Paul. This has been the Creative Writing Life podcast. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and most importantly, go write and or draw something.